Good morning. Being 9 a.m., I'll call to order the McHenry County Board Committee of the Whole meeting of September 15th, 2022. Mr. Vijik will lead us in the pledge today.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Kathy, can you call the roll, please?
Michelle Aving. Here. Carlos Acosta. Pamela Althoff. Present. Kay Bates. Here. Carolyn Campbell. Here. John Collins.
Here.
Stephen Doherty.
Here.
Joseph Gottemahler. Here. Tanya Jindrick.
Here.
John Young. James Kearns.
Here.
Teresa Meshes.
Here.
Lori Parrish.
Here.
Robert Nowak.
Here.
Carolyn Schofield.
Here.
Jeffrey Schwartz.
Present.
Michael Scala.
Present.
Larry Smith.
Here.
Jeffrey Thorson.
Here.
Michael Vajuk.
Here.
Tracy Von Bergen.
Here.
Kelly Wegner.
Here.
Thomas Wilbeck.
Here.
Paula Jensen. Chairman Bueller.
Here. Having a quorum, we'll move on to public comment of 3 minutes to speak on the topic of choice. At that time, you see a red light come on, and I would ask you to summarize your comments. Jan Vanderspool. Move it to the top.
Let me get situated and see if I can focus on this. All right, I'll start and you'll start the timer. My name is Jan Vanderspool, a 36-year resident at 8708 Bull Run Trail, Woodstock, County District 4. I am here to express my seething anger with what the county zoning ordinance for a granny pad, aka ancillary dwelling unit, as a right, has done to irrevocably damage my formerly safe and tranquil dead-end street of Bull Run Trail, Bull Run Estate subdivision. The ancillary dwelling unit, ADU, needs to be called by its true long-term impact, an eyesore rental property inconsistent with my estate E3 zoning and all the other lots on the street. The building permit process assured that my subdivision's covenants prohibiting any other dwelling structure, temporary or otherwise, were not worth their weight in toilet paper. I have asked the Planning and Development Department to discuss and amend the process so that my covenant rights to enforce in the courts are not unilaterally usurped by the county zoning. I am objecting to the building permit issuance process and believe that the ADU concept has run amok. The permit to impact the impervious surface area should have never been issued without at least some sort of hearing. Again, a flawed process, because 4 lots on the north side of Bull Run Trail share drainage issues. Also flawed as a part of the current permit process, stormwater management studies have no vision, viewpoint, or responsibility on the impact to properties other than the specific property under study, even when showing underwater condition for a neighbor. Also, the permit issued ADU lot directly east of me, having a large chlorinated pool, has raised the need to have chlorine water disposal a part of the permitting process for pools. Big-time city folks with rights moving to the country respond with thoughts like, oh my God, my backyard is flooded. It's a floodplain. I can't have mosquitoes breeding. I have to pump it out. Their front ditch drains to my engineered stormwater retention, for which I am financially responsible to maintain. My 150 to 200-year oak tree is now dead. A chlorinated water disposal the chlorinated water disposal need to not also be a big-time city folk culture shock by permit design and engineering. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. That's it for our public comments today. My comments, good morning. I have some items to share with you before we begin reviewing the agenda for next Tuesday's voting meeting. I'd like to start out this morning by commending Law and Government Committee Chairman Jeff Thorson for his collaborative leadership and seeking input from department heads, countywide elected officials, McHenry County's delegation in the Illinois General Assembly, and fellow county board members for our 2023 legislative program. Law and Government will be hosting members of our delegation at their next two meetings to discuss our priorities. Senator Wilcox and Representatives Ness, Reich, Weber, and Kiker will be coming in September. Senators DeWitt and Severson and Sosnowski and McLaughlin will be coming in October. We have a tentative commitment from Senator McConkey as well. When the new county board is seated in December, it will inherit a strong footing to adopt the 2023 legislative program and be ready to advocate for McHenry County's interests when the 103rd General Assembly convenes next January. Thank you again to Mr. Thorson and the committee. And by the way, if any county board member has items they would like to add to the discussion, feel free to fill out the questionnaire that was sent out last Friday and email it to Communications and Project Manager Alicia Schuler. Our communications staff has created a survey to gauge how well McHenry County government communicates with residents and examine ways we can improve. Communicating with our constituents is very important, and we want to make sure that we're reaching people the best we can. You can find the link to the survey on the county website, and we've posted the link and a QR code on the county's social media accounts. And speaking of communicating, I'm pleased to announce that the meetings of the McHenry County Board and its standing committees are now being streamed live on YouTube. The channel is called McHenry County Meetings, and you can subscribe to be informed whenever a meeting is streamed. You can also select past meetings through playlists that are organized by committee or commission. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our general channel, McHenry County, Illinois, to watch videos highlighting the many things that McHenry County government does. The deadline for people to take the survey to comment on the McHenry County 2050 Comprehensive Plan is coming up September 30th. We want to ensure that we have as much public comment on the plan as possible so that our blueprint to guide our development decisions over the next 30 years is the best it can be. If you haven't yet taken the survey, please do so by visiting hla.fyi/McHenry County or by visiting our official website and clicking the photo with the 2050 plan logo. Your voice counts, your opinion matters, and we want to hear it. I'd like to wish Gary Mehrhofer all the best upon his retirement after almost 20 years as Crystal Lake City Manager. He left an indelible mark on Crystal Lake, including building the current City Hall, bringing new businesses to the Route 14 corridor, turning the old Vulcan Lakes Quarry into the Three Oaks Recreation Center, helping develop the Regional Southeast Emergency Communications 911 Center, and so much more. His expertise and professionalism will be missed. And finally, this morning, I want to thank County Administrator Peter Austin, Chief Financial Officer Kevin Bueso, and Finance and Audit Committee Chairman Mike Scala for their hard work on the budget. As you know, McHenry County is facing an onslaught of costly unfunded mandates, coupled with substantial inflationary increases. This budget has been by far the most challenging in recent memory, and their hard work continues. They will be bringing forward options for you to consider so that you as a county board member can make the decisions to ensure the best interests of the county and your constituents are met. Peter, Kevin, and Mike will have more to share at the special committee of the whole for the budget, which starts at 10 a.m. on Thursday, September 29th. And this concludes my remarks. We have two presentations before we review next Tuesday's agenda items. Peter Wallers with the Northwest Water Planning Alliance will be giving us a presentation on the local water supply. And after that, Jim Haisler and our own Pam Althoff will be giving a presentation to us on behalf of the McHenry County Conservation Foundation.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to present on the Northwest Water Planning Alliance. My name is Pete Wallers. I'm the Technical Advisory Group Chairman for the NWPA. So again, happy to be here and thank you for having me. Want to just give some basic background on the organization and then a little bit about NWPA and then where our current areas of focus are. So try to get through this pretty quickly. Most of you may recall that in about 2008, there was one of the second, regional water supply studies was done for our region. It was Water 2050. It was 11-county area, included the normal CMAP counties, but also included some of the far-reaching counties of Grundy and Winnebago and others. So there's 11 counties total. And in that group was 35 folks were on that board, or on that steering committee, I guess we'd call it, and I was on there along with other municipal representatives. And one of the things we started to understand was the focus for the group was kind of Lake Michigan orientated. And while you can understand that because there's so much water being served by Lake Michigan water in the region, the municipalities out in the kind of the western area, McHenry, Kane, Kendall, DeKalb, and Lake, said, hey, there's a lot of us are using groundwater, surface water, and so our needs and some of our concerns are a little different than the Lake Michigan users. So that's really what led to the formation of the NWPA, and it was Mayor Haisler from Aurora who was instrumental in forming it, and Chairman McConaughey from Kane County, the chairman at the time, the county board chairman. They got together and decided to form the NWPA, again, to give kind of a planning group or a sub-regional group the opportunity to make some decisions. So one of the things that resonated with Mayor Haisler, he was the mayor of the city of Aurora, was the dewatering of the deep sandstone. And if you look at the graphic, there's two areas that were really of concern at the time. Now, this is back in 2008, was in the Joliet region and the Aurora region. So it kind of hit home for that mayor, and again, led to the idea that, hey, we need to really get serious about water supply planning as we move forward. So that, again, led to the formation of the NWPA in 2010. One of the unique, I think, features of it is that it's managed by 14 elected public officials. There's 5 county board members that are on there, and then also members from the COGS, and I'll get into the specific membership. But all voluntary group, including the people on the TAC committee are all volunteers. So we have good leadership from the elected officials, and then we have some folks that are able to give some advice from the technical side. So these are the groups that it was formed under, and there was some, I guess, urgency to get it formed, and so we went through the councils of government to be able to incorporate as many communities as we could. There's about 80 communities that are represented by the different councils of government, and then obviously we have the 5 counties. So that's the formation of the group. In specifics, these are the membership. We have nominal dues. I think you're donating about $1,000 a year. We appreciate that. It's very helpful. We use that to support programs that the executive committee wants us to promote. So that's the membership generally broke down. This is loosely the area that is represented in that orangish color, and that's the non-Lake Michigan, if you will, users. I think as time has gone on, we've realized that we're probably starting to, as communities that have been with NWPA have switched to Lake Michigan, we're starting to see some crossover, so we're probably going to be having some split membership, if you will, that includes the Lake Michigan users as well, because some of the policies certainly represent both areas of water use. So, and again, the structure, I think, which is very important, is the elected officials are on the executive committee. They direct what's going to happen. They let the technical advisory committee know what needs to be worked on, what policies they want us to look at, or what science they want us to look at. We bring it back to them, and then they decide how to make recommendations to the members. And we have no, real authority other than a voluntary implementation. And we think just common sense is really what carries the day for our group. We do have a strategic plan. Our website is nwpa.us. If you're interested, please visit. Our general things that we're trying to promote is just intelligent use of water. We don't want to end up like the Colorado River Basin. Right now we're in a really good position. We want to keep it that way. So that's kind of our focus, has been just to promote intelligent use of water. And then also to inform decision makers. So probably should have been up here sooner to make a presentation, but again, I appreciate the opportunity today. We meet the fourth Tuesday of the month. Our technical advisory committee meets, and open to anybody that would like to attend. During COVID, we started meeting remotely. We're still doing mostly remote meetings, but we have 4 quarterly meetings now in person. The executive committee is meeting in person. They meet every other month on the fourth Thursday. And we generally meet in Elgin. Mayor Captain from the city of Elgin is the current chairman of our executive committee. Probably our biggest strength has been our collaboration with other agencies. From the start, we've been able to work with State Water Survey. IDNR has funded our work, and CMAP has been very instrumental in providing administrative support to our group. So that's been really helpful. So we're able to leverage, a small amount to a larger, to do larger things. So that's been helpful to us. And again, that's probably our biggest strength, is our ability to collaborate with other agencies. And I just want to touch on the four areas that we're working on right now, and I think these are probably things that some of you are aware of, but maybe not. I'll come back to the water sustainability plan. That's our current major effort. Sensible salting, we formed a subcommittee. Scott Kuykendall from the county, McHenry County, chaired that committee. And what we focused on was the snow and ice control and reduction of chloride use in parking lots and areas where private parking lots and large facility parking lots where there wasn't a lot of discussion on that. So most of you are familiar with municipalities and counties that are doing road work, road de-icing. They're very tuned in to using pre-wetting agents, measuring their salt use, and are really on top of it. But when you look at, and I'm sure you've all encountered this, when you go to parking lots like a big shopping center, you'll see a lot of salt down that probably didn't need to be there. So we're looking to have a little more intelligent use of salt and chlorides in areas like these large hospital areas, shopping centers, this government center, things like that. So we formed the Sensible Salting Committee. We brought in some industry experts. We brought in users, people that are doing this type of work, private landscapers and others, and started working on that. And then as we went through our process, we realized that the Conservation Foundation was also working on this type of system for private snow and ice control for parking lots. So we've partnered with them now, and we're moving forward with that. And there'll be a certification program that'll be developed for folks that put down the chlorides to help them use it a little more intelligently. One of the things that we had identified some time ago was increasing chloride levels in the groundwater, and we'd like to reverse that by making a little more intelligent use of chlorides and de-icing agents. So that's been a big push for our group, and we're making progress. And again, we've been able to partner with the Conservation Foundation, which has been a plus for us. So we're working with the local library in Elgin to come up with a traveling water exhibit that we can use in multiple communities. That's been kind of an ongoing project with the library up there. And then we generally cover a number of just general water topics like emerging contaminants. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the effort now to look at PFAS and PFOA elements and see what should be done with that. So, that's kind of a little bit about what we're about. On the sustainability plan, what we're trying to do is develop a regional or a sub-regional sustainability plan which analyzes the supply that we have in that region and the demand over time. The idea being, if there's a shortfall if we don't have enough supply to meet the demand, what do we do? Do we develop new supplies? Do we try to do conservation? What options do we have? So we want to try to get out ahead of that so that regionally we can look at future water supply. The plan, as we see it, is more of a roadmap because what you'll find as you look closer on the macro level, things don't always happen the same way as they do on a micro level. So each community is really going to be responsible for doing their own sustainability plan. We just want to help them have the elements in there that they can look at. And the reason for that is that each community has different water supply assets. Some have shallow groundwater, some have deep, some have river supply. So you can't just broad brush it. And I'll give you an example on the deep sandstone, which is a huge regional aquifer that is used in McHenry County. It's also used in Will County. Well, you may have heard in Will County they've been dewatering that in the Joliet region. So communities in Joliet region now are going to Lake Michigan water. Well, in areas of northern Kane and McHenry County, the deep sandstone is still solid. So if you looked at it macro, you'd say, well, there's a problem with the deep sandstone. Well, there is if you're in Joliet, but if you're in, Marengo or other places, you wouldn't have that same problem. So you have to look at it individually. So again, what we're trying to do is give that roadmap for the future. And if you think about it, this was a slide that was presented at the Water 2050, and it's from a study that was done in Texas, or a program in Texas. But what it does, it simply shows that you have so much supply and so much demand. And by doing that, we kind of simplify things going forward, and you can see that you have a deficit there. This is just, again, an example, but this will be the type of thing we'll be developing for our region, and then recommending that communities and individual water suppliers take a look at themselves. So again, the idea is so you can see what's coming down the line, make the right decisions if you want to go into conservation or bring in additional supply or just whatever. So again, it's all about trying to stay ahead of things and avoiding problems. So that's a bit about us. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Do any board members have questions for Mr. Wallers? Mr. Thorson?
Yeah, that,
Turn his mic
chart you just showed with,
Turn your mic on, please.
sorry about that. That chart, yeah, that chart right there. That's a projected water demand and supply. We're already 2 decades into that. What is the actuality? Do we have any data on that?
So this is just an example from Texas. We're developing our own.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Yeah.
I just wanted to show you what our goal is to provide this type of product so we can see what the supply is and what the demand is, so we can see if we have a shortfall or a surplus.
Do we at this point have knowledge of what our current demand is versus our current supply?
We're working on it.
Okay.
So it's a little complicated, but CMAP is responsible for doing demand projections. So we're working with them. And the Illinois State Water Survey is responsible for the modeling of the deep and the shallow and other the river resources. So we're trying to marry those two groups together. And we're in process right now of doing our sustainability plan. We think it's going to take another 2 years to finish it. So I'm hopeful at that time I'd like to come back and give you an update that might be useful to you.
Ms. Schofield?
Thanks. Thank you very much for coming and the explanation, and kind of what prompted the request for you to come and make this presentation was, and I know we struggle with it at NWPA, is the perception of where we're at in the present time, you know, because we see it rain for the last couple weeks, so it seems like, oh, we're all good, and then, you know, we'll have a little area of a drought and people might get concerned, and then it goes back up. So do you have any update, or can you let us know the current status or where we might be as far as water supply? You know, are we in a drought condition still, or have we come out of that?
I think we're generally out of the drought at this point. I don't track it probably as much, and part of the reason for that is our region is, I don't want to say drought resistant, but we are pretty drought resistant because most municipalities have multiple sources of water and are able to manage droughts if they occur. Where we see more impact on the droughts is central and southern Illinois, where there's more reliance on irrigation for crop production.
Okay, great. And then this will kind of display that overall do you have any estimation on a timeline of when that will be, or is there no real sense of urgency from the standpoint of it's so long-term?
Well, yeah, it is a long-term issue. And the short term, and I think as you follow individual communities, most of them have a pretty good handle on their supply and demand. And so what we want to do is make sure that that continues, and that you know, we make sure that doesn't change, that they can still provide adequate supply going forward. So we do see it as a long-range issue. The deep sandstone, for example, is this tremendous reservoir. We know that we have been, you know, mining it, or, you know, drawing the water down, but there's a vast reserve that's still there. But what we want to do, and what you'll find if you're in a community that has to switch to another water supply, it's expensive. So you want to do things that are less expensive, like maybe implement water conservation, you know, even odd watering, you know, simple things, you know, recommending the use of WaterSense products that save water, so that you can reduce your per capita consumption, and then the resources you do have last longer. And that's really one of the benefits of doing some of these other programs like conservation and other things. And they really don't affect your lifestyle. So if you put, for example, if you buy a washing machine now, it's more efficient, it uses less water, it's more energy efficient. It doesn't change the experience of doing laundry, you still have to do it, but it's using less water, and that's a good thing. And so what we've been seeing is regionally, nationally, a per capita reduction in water use, which we see as a good thing. So it used to be routine when I started, and I'm a consulting engineer, I've been in this for a while, as you might imagine. But, you know, we would see 100 gallons per capita per day as a normal water planning element, right? Now, you know, it's routine that we're looking at water demand at, you know, 40 gallons per capita per day, which still seems like a lot, but it's a tremendous reduction of what was happening in the past. And the last time that CMAP issued their report, there was a significant continuation of decline of per capita consumption. So that is also attributed to the fact that there's more Lake Michigan water available to the suburbs. So you may be seeing more communities planning for Lake Michigan water. Well, one of the things that made that possible is that the per capita consumption has dropped.
And I have one last question too. I know that Joliet's been doing some, they've had some grants or work that they've been doing down there to finally address their drawdown of the aquifer. And is that, do you know the status of that? Has it been helping, and will that be incorporated then into the new?
So Joliet, along with 5 other communities, has formed a water commission called the Grand Prairie Water Commission. They are going to build a 31-mile pipeline to City of Chicago and get Lake Michigan water from wheeled through City of Chicago. That is targeted to be online in 2030. So that's a major amount of communities that'll be off the deep sandstone in the Joliet region. There's still a lot of use in the deep sandstone down there because they have a lot of unincorporated large industrial users down there. So I think we'll continue to see declines in the water level over time, but it was a big step forward to move Joliet and these other communities off, and so I commend them for doing that. And it's expensive as you might expect endeavor to do that. It's, 800 million or thereabouts, so it's not inexpensive, but, necessary. So that's ongoing. They're committed to that. So in 2030, they will be off that. So, I see that as a positive for the region and a positive for the state, really.
Thanks, and I mentioned that because I think that was our biggest concern, was their drawdown was really affecting us in the future. So that will probably stabilize, is my assumption then.
It'll help. I think we'll still see drawdown. State Water Survey modeling still indicates that it'll be continuing to draw down. But you know what, that's just part of the realities and the reason you do need to do this sustainability planning and look ahead, because all of these resources are in some way challenged. So shallow groundwater is typically challenged with increased chloride levels. They're still manageable, but we saw that is an issue, and that's the reason why we got involved with sensible salting. Deep sandstone is oversubscribed to in some locations, Joliet being kind of the poster child. But there are thankfully solutions. I mean, we have a pretty robust infrastructure here in northeastern Illinois, and we're blessed to have this Lake Michigan source because it is a benefit to our communities to be able to switch over to that.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for your work with NWPA.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vijay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. Two things. While I understand the idea of the supply, and I understand your water demand, is your organization working with other organizations on the infrastructure to get the supply to the demand? Is there a group that you're working with as cities, municipalities, counties are now facing the challenges of aging pipelines, for instance? Is there a discussion amongst your technical group with other groups?
So we're more focused on supply than we are distribution, but our group has a number of public works directors that are on our technical advisory group, so we're aware of the issues. We're also aware of the idea of regional collaboration, but we're really not in a position to, I guess, influence that per se. We certainly support, for example, in the Kendall area, which is quite a little bit south of this, but still in the NWPA region, the Village of Oswego, City of Yorkville, and Village of Montgomery have partnered to go together to bring a pipeline out from DuPage Water Commission for a water supply. So communities are working together. We're certainly supportive of that, but our focus really is on maintaining quality and quantity of supply.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible that we might be able to get a copy of the presentation so that that would be available? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield.
Thank you. Mr. Nowak?
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much for your presentation. I thought it was very interesting. Do you have, a question I have, it comes in my mind, and I've seen a presentation or heard a presentation years ago on this. How is our water here in this northern area of Illinois? How's it recharged?
Well, it's different for different sources. So the shallow groundwater, which we generally classify as sand and gravels and shallow limestone, that's typically recharged by rainwater that falls on the land. The deep sandstone is recharged a little more complicated. In the Chicagoland area, there's a layer, a geological layer called the Maquoketa Shale that shields direct influence of rainwater to go down. So most of the recharge is actually a little bit further west, like in DeKalb, and where the Maquoketa Shale is absent. So it's not directly recharged. I'm not sure about McHenry County, to be quite honest, but in the Kane area, we don't get direct recharge from rainwater. It's recharged further to the west in DeKalb County. So that aquifer is a little unique. Obviously, the rivers are, continually recharged with rainwater, so that is kind of a renewable resource. But with climate change, what they're seeing is more swings in the flows, right? So the concern with the rivers is if the water levels get too low, can you still remove that water? Hasn't been a problem to date, but again, looking long-term, that's probably something that needs to be looked at. So shallow is really recharged locally. The deep is a more of a remote recharge.
Okay, thank you. I just kind of wanted to just follow up. This presentation, and I might be wrong, but they talked about the Rock River, like recharging some of that groundwater in our area as well. Is that still true?
That could very well be possible. I mean, I'd have to really get back to you on that to be specific, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. Because the deep sandstone does go into southern Wisconsin.
So, yeah, so it's way out,
Yeah.
pretty far. All right, thank you very much.
Ms. Campbell?
Yeah, so thank you for your presentation. It's very interesting. So my understanding is that, especially in McHenry County, we do rely more on the shallow grant, right? And I'm just gonna say shallow and deep, so I don't get into the different types of limestone and
Right.
everything. And that, I think, I just learned yesterday, because I thought the deep was recharged from Wisconsin, but there was a water forum tour yesterday, and they talked about it being recharged out of Boone County. And you're talking about that shale prevents it from happening. So we tend to draw more from the shallow. My understanding that the recharge on the deep can take up to 1,000 years because it takes so long for one drop of water to make its way down here. So in part of what we're trying to do to increase supply, or at least be more efficient, whatever, we have a lot of gray infrastructure that actually moves our water. It channels it, moves it, and gets it to the rivers and on its way. We kind of look at, in the past, we've always looked at how do we get water away, because it's a bad thing, it's flooding. Are we looking at more ways of, I mean, I know we're doing that in conservation areas, but where we hold the water longer on the land so we can be recharging the shallow aquifers more, as opposed to relying so much on gray infrastructure.
So stormwater management has evolved quite a bit. I mean, initially it was to, abstract the peak and control flooding. But as time's gone on, I think the very point that you're raising has been concerning. So a lot of stormwater management designs now do incorporate an infiltration design. You really have to be cognizant of what you're designing. So if you're doing, for example, a fueling station, a groundwater recharge type basin, probably not the right application, for that location, because we're concerned about getting a spill into the groundwater, right? But if you're doing a routine type of development, residential or whatever, then having that type of infiltration basin makes a lot of sense. Some areas are more important for recharge than others, and I know a lot of communities are looking to identify where their recharge zones are and then do land use planning accordingly. So I think that's an important element. So I think that's all happening. To the extent that it's like mandated, I think it varies county to county, but it's definitely important. And especially if you rely on shallow resources, being able to recharge them makes a lot of sense. But you do want to be, you do want to make sure that you're using the right technology for the right land use.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming. Very
Thank you.
interesting.
Appreciate it.
Okay, next we have Pam Althoff and Jim Haisler to talk to us about the McHenry County Conservation Foundation.
And I'd also like to invite Carolyn Campbell from the board, because she now is part of this wonderful foundation organization. So Carolyn, if you're comfortable. I found it. Okay. So, good morning, all. Want to take a few minutes to take this opportunity to remind all of you the difference between the McHenry County Conservation District and the McHenry County Conservation Foundation. They are two distinct, separate organizations, but we sync to provide the best possible services and amenities and conservation. And we could not have planned this any better to have followed that presentation, because one of the things your conservation district does do for you with our assistance is ensure that your groundwater is definitely percolating and is much safer. So, going to the next slide. Oh, you did? Okay. So I want to point out our wonderful board of directors. We have Kevin Ivers, Brad Semmel, Kimberly Becker, Ray Eisenbrenner, who are our officers, and then you can see the rest of the board. These are unbelievably talented, professional, multifaceted individuals that kind of make up this board. We have a green infrastructure specialist, we have a natural resource, we have a wildlife biologist, we have an individual who was a former district board member, we have a businessman who has 2 degrees and unbelievable financial wherewithal, we have realtors as well, and we even have a couple of elected officials that help that move forward. And with us in the audience too is the woman who heads us up, who guides us, who directs us, and who makes that collaboration possible, Shauna Flavel. Shauna, you want to stand up so everybody knows who you are? And so if you look, this is my favorite slide. Oh, that doesn't work well. And they thought I was going to be the one that touched it.
Peter run it. He ran that thing pretty good.
I'm clicking the arrow. What about pointing toward you?
Is it possible? Can we go back to the very beginning?
Oh.
Oh, there we go.
Oh. Did I go to the end?
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
I did say thank you.
All right, this is my favorite slide. Okay, so this explains visually the difference between the district and the foundation. So you have the district that provides your, substantive, tasty, yummy, appealing tomato sandwich, right? They do everything that the taxing body, the conservation district, needs to do. And then we have the foundation. That's kind of the club sandwich that provides all the extra amenities and additions that the conservation district needs to make that tomato salad a little bit maybe more substantive and appealing to everyone. I wanted to do mashed potatoes and gravy, but Shauna convinced me that was a little, not so good. So if you go to the next slide, here is the locations of the 25,623 acres the district maintains and operates. And you can see two, strategically geographically throughout the county, but again, placed to ensure that we are preserving the best possible sites and the ones that assist the county be vibrant and responsible from an environmental perspective. I want to point out, again, everyone knows that the Conservation District also provides some recreation. I'll let Jim talk a little bit about that later. But what I really want to point out is 25,000 acres. I want you to compare that 6% overall conservation properties in McHenry County to the 11% in Cook and the 10% in Lake. People think McHenry County has tons of open space because they drive around and they see huge amounts of farmland. That is not preserved property. That is working farms that ultimately may never stay going forward as farmland. And we've seen that here as we have more and more presentations about farmers choosing to use their property for solar purposes. So I just point that out. And here too, more importantly, during COVID, we really saw that people looked for opportunities to be outside and not enclosed spaces, and they found the Conservation District sites. And once they found them, they continued to use them. Importance of the foundation, again, is that you have a Conservation District that is extraordinarily responsible fiscally. They do not spend money willy-nilly. The foundation works with them to designate or locate or find areas that we can raise funds for to ensure that they can use their money for operations and maintenance. And then we can provide them with the, the mayo and the cheese and the bacon and all of those things that we need. So we're very, very proud of the fact that, again, we're getting the word out, we're letting people know that the Conservation District is out there, but the foundation is needed because we raise all those additional monies that are required. And besides that, we also provide opportunities for our volunteers. And having said that, I'm now going to turn it over to Jim Haisler.
Well, don't take my notes.
Oh, these are your notes, I forgot.
She doesn't need notes, I need notes, so. All right, thank you. All good. All right, moving on, get that one. And thank you for having me. Again, Jim Haisler, I think most of you know me as the head of the Realtor Association. Of course, that's my day job, and I just moonlight as a conservationist. But sometimes people think that real estate developers, real estate people are opposed to conservation, and that is absolutely not true. And again, as Pam said, we've got a realtor on the board, we've got myself on the board, and clearly we're in real estate. I'm also a beekeeper, and my house was listed as one of the first at-home with conservation through the Land Conservancy. So there is no conflict here. One of the reasons I moved here was so I could ride the bike trails on my bike that we all know that I love to ride. So thank you, and I'm glad to be on that board. And this page. So supporters, corporate, let's go to the next one here. So corporate contributors are big for us. So as we at the foundation are looking, as Pam just said, to support projects and not operations. So the district gets those tax funds in and supports their operations through those dollars. But there's often a lot of projects that they'd like to do that there isn't funding for, and that's where the foundation steps in. And that's why we're here, is to help you recognize, and we know we're speaking to the choir, most of you get this, that there is a difference, that the foundation's the fundraising arm for these special projects, and that's what we're looking to fund. And so we'll get to a couple of those in a second. With corporate sponsors, what we're looking for is to reach out to them, but oftentimes we struggle getting contributions from them. They don't understand that the passions of their employees are the same things that we all love as well, which are conservation. And as Pam just showed you, that the increase in the number of users at our parks and our trails and all those things. So helping these corporations understand the passions of their employees, and that's what motivates their contributions. And I was going to talk about the Conservation Congress. I think you're all aware of that. We have a big event every year. We get together, we talk about conservation. We have great presenters that come in. We had a futurist coming at the last one, which was, yes, about conservation, but even well beyond that. And if you missed it, you really missed out a fabulous presentation. I mean, again, beyond just conservation. All right, supporters. So land and habitat restoration. So again, following Mr. Waller's here was ideal. So I was going to talk about RAP, your Water Resource Action Plan, and the Heartland Realtor Organization help fund that in a big way. We firmly believe in water conservation. I think it was Lynn just asked about water, or maybe it was Carolyn, asked about the water in the shallow wells. When I first met Scott Kuykendall many years ago, there was a presentation, I don't know who spoke at that one and said this, but it takes about 7 years for that rainwater to reach those shallow wells. So yes, it rained hard last weekend, and that's going to take 7 years before it reaches those shallow wells, and maybe that figure is no longer accurate, but it gives you an idea of where that's at. And the 1,000 years to deep wells, this is a concern. So we're all about that. I think of one of the projects I first heard about when I got on the board, and that's the re-meandering of the Nippersing Creek that took place a few years ago. So about 150 years ago, that creek meandered through Glacier Oaks, the 3,500 acre gem that we have in the county. It meandered through there. And then about 100 years ago, farmers came in, pioneers came in, and straightened out that creek because they needed it to irrigate their farmlands and to have for water runoff. But what that did is it sped up the flow of the water, and that washed away a lot of the population of the animals and creatures that were living in that creek. And the water recharge, the bogs that were holding water, were drained out for farming. So what did we do? The Conservation District, along with funding from the foundation a few years ago, we re-meandered that creek to help rebuild those bogs so that we can have water sitting and slowly recharging those areas. So it's things like that, those projects that the foundation is raising money for to help rebuild our water surveys. The oaks, yes. So the oak trees. I have a long survey. I'm gonna skip not even read all the yellow ones for you. But some of the cool parts from the oak survey. So the oak trees, and speaking of the gentleman in Forest, talked about his 150-year-old oak tree dying. We are concerned about that. We're watching those oak trees. So let me jump the middle one here, which is my favorite one. So since 2005, McHenry County has lost 86 acres of mature oak trees. That's about 65 football fields. So imagine that, worth of oak trees. That's coverage. And then we talk about the acorn. So in 2 experiments, we found that 98% of acorns in artificial catches located in dense, tall, herbaceous vegetation were eaten by white-footed mice or meadow voles. They never have a chance to rebuild, to grow, because they're eaten by the animals. The squirrels even move away from those areas because the mice have eaten their food. So squirrels don't even live there. So there's more. We can send you the survey. I'm going to keep going for you. Oh, yes.
Can I
Well,
do
of
that?
course. I expected.
Of course. And I want to point out to you why this is so important, because this information is given to the county. It's incorporated into the GIS system, so we know as we plan as an entity for the future, we have all of this information available to us. And I look at all of you, and part of the information I need to go out as well is that municipalities, many municipalities, now require when a subdivision comes in and the trees go down, that the new developer has to plant X amount of trees to replace them. Some of it we need to talk about our oak savannas and replacing oak trees because they're so important to the overall environment as well. And the foundation was instrumental in providing the funding to make sure all of that happened.
Thank you. No, I need the help. All right, environment, okay, next one. Next one. So environmental education, so getting the children involved, a huge part of it. We're looking at, we've got the beautiful Prairie View Education Center in Prairie Grove area, fabulous. Foundation provides funding for those projects. We need to get people, kids involved in those programs to see what nature is all about early. My kids are 18 now, but have grew up on their screens. So we need to get them outside and seeing all these things. And we really work closely with the special education needs of children in the county. So the ADA, NISRA, we're looking to provide all-terrain vehicles for handicapped people, and not only just physically handicapped, but mentally handicapped people as well. This goes beyond physical limitations. This goes to the mental limitations as well to help them understand the fun of being outdoors. I mean, look at the smile on that little girl's face in the creek, netting some, probably looking for mussels. We're going to talk about the mussel in just a second. Okay, recreation. So, of course, as Pam said, recreation is up, but some of the things that we've recently done, we welcome you to come join us. So last Saturday I was out with one of the ecologists and the education director, Becky, from the Conservation District. We rode the trail. We stopped at a few places. He talked about some of the projects. We stopped at the creek, talked about the mussels. Shauna's got one coming up October 1st, the Hum Trail. So come ride with us. Come out to the Hum Trail from 9 to 11 o'clock. We ride slow. In case that's a concern, we ride slow. Well below my normal average, but I slowed down. It's all good. It's a fun ride. So come on out to that. But Pedal Paddle Saddle is a great event. I'm going to get to the hunter safety in a second here. ADA, all right, some of those things.
Hunter, you could do the hunter thing.
Yes, I'm coming right to hunter in a second. Okay, we'll talk about the hunters. So we listen to the people. We're always open to hearing what people are looking for in the parks. So one of the things is there were a couple groups came to us. One was the hunters that wanted to have access to the lands to be able to hunt on. So the foundation worked with the district, worked with other groups to find a way to allow special permitting for hunting on conservation district land. That's pretty cool. That doesn't happen everywhere. The snowmobile groups came to us and said, we'd really like to work through some of the areas that you don't let us work through. Now, there are some safety issues. We did deny a couple of routes, but we approved a whole lot of other routes that they're looking to do with the snowmobile route. So looking for ways to work with the groups, we listen to what they're looking for and find avenues to make that come together. Good?
App.
Okay.
We pay for the app.
The app? Which app? Go ahead, jump in.
And again, you know, everybody assumes conservation district property is something that you can't gain access to unless you're just walking. Not true. You just heard about how we collaborated with the hunters to give them a time and a space so that they could use their tax dollars in the way that they wanted to. The foundation discovered that one of the complaints was how difficult it was to register, to find the locations, to find out what you were supposed to do. So we provided funds for the conservation district to develop an app on your phone or on your iPad that assists in easier registration, easier direction, et cetera. And the district would not have normally incorporated that into their average budget, so the foundation stepped in, found funds, and provided that amenity.
Thank you. I knew I was missing a whole big chunk. So the two other pieces we did, Camp Lakota. So the Boy Scouts were looking to liquidate They're Camp Lakota. The foundation stepped in to provide funding. The district didn't have the dollars for that, didn't have the means to make that happen, but the foundation did. So the foundation acquired Camp Lakota, is working through a process that we have to go through legally and for other reasons, that we'll be turning that over to the district in future years. But right now we're working through a few other things, but that's a large piece of land that we're looking to add to the maps that we talked about. And then we look at Hackmatack. That was a large challenge to get that National Wildlife Refuge designation for that area. There was a lot of work that went to it, and the foundation did much of that work along with the district to get that to happen and to then put together the Habitat group. So, thank you. Checker spot butterfly. So we had a monarch up, and I'm like, how would we put a monarch up? We're trying to preserve the checker spot. So we've got groups going out into Glacier right now and planting the turtlehead plants that attract the very endangered checker spot butterfly. So thank you, Pam. She got the sandwich screen, and I got this screen, so I'm happy with that. But we can't do this without you. So we need a partnership. We need your help to get the word out, to spread the word about the foundation and all the things the foundation does. Oftentimes, people think of us as one and the same, and that's fine in the general scale of things, but we are have two separate missions in a way, in that we're raising the funds to help provide those projects. So we're spreading the word and need your help getting the message out, volunteers and financially. We listen to the people, that's where I was gonna talk about that, so we're good there. All right. So we are volunteers. We're here looking for your help. We're looking for financial help. We're looking for volunteer help. And not necessarily just directly from you, but from people you know. So that 6 degrees of separation, it's not always about who you know, but it's about who they know. So wherever you can help us spread the word, you can certainly donate at the site there, McHenryConservation.org. Sign up online, and please, we welcome you to sign up online for the newsletter and the magazine, which comes through the district, but we do support that as well. What else, Pam?
I want to give Carolyn an opportunity to
Yes.
close for us, but what I missed that is important is Conservation District, because it is a taxing body, doesn't always have the availability to garner grants as a taxing entity, so the foundation is absolutely instrumental in stepping in and writing and applying for those grant opportunities that are prohibited because the district is a taxing entity. So that's really one of the very first reasons that the foundation was created. Carolyn?
Okay, so I wasn't really planning on talking, so I'm not going to say much. Everything's been already said, but I think everyone recognizes what a great return on investment that the Conservation District is. It provides a multitude of ecosystem services, protects properties from flooding, does the recharging of our groundwater that we've talked about, filters it, cleans the air. We know that it has been documented that there are definitely improved mental and physical health outcomes when people have access to open space, which reduces medical costs and keeps people healthier. Oh my goodness. And it's also a big part of our economy. It's part of our tourism, and it helps with our local economy. So that's not my little plug. I like to say that every single time. But before I close, I'm new to this. This is a great group of people to work with. I do want to have a shout out to people on the board who have worked with the Conservation District as well. Carolyn Schofield was the liaison several years ago. Kelly Wegener is the liaison right now, and Joe Gaudemoller was a past trustee. So I appreciate the influence and help that they put in with the Conservation District as well. So thank you to Jim and Pam. They did a wonderful job.
We're done. Questions?
Any? Ms. Parrish?
Sure, thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for your presentation, and I'm excited that you were here, and whether it was planned or not, I think it's great. We're learning about water and learning about the foundation. I want to share just a quick funny story, and Shauna might remember this. So as a new board member, 4 years ago, I just dove in deep right away and was going to as many meetings as I could, and I was reading everything that I could and getting to know what this county board thing was that I found myself in. And so I went to a meeting, and I was sitting there, and I realized that I wasn't at the Conservation District meeting that I thought I was attending. I was at a Conservation Foundation meeting. And so was able to collect myself internally. Hopefully I wasn't too red. But Shauna was amazing. And coincidentally, I attended that meeting after the Congress that I had not attended. And so they talked all about the Congress, the Conservation Congress, I think that's what it's called. And, you know, as a new board member, and even just as a 25-year resident of Crystal Lake, I learned a lot of, you know, what I didn't know. I mean, I thought I knew a lot about Crystal Lake, but I knew nothing about the county. And this was one of the gems that I learned about. And so one of the things I want to share, besides my thank yous to all that you do, and Shauna, I'm glad to see that you're still with the foundation and excited. I'm sure your leadership and influence is just amazing, is when the new board is elected, and I know there's a lot of information and that orientation is just really overwhelming, but I know that there's going to be a lot of new members. And I would just encourage those of the staff and even the chairman, as you're identifying the what that orientation looks like for all the new members, many of the new members that will be on this board, I would encourage a stronger connection or partnership in exploration and explaining of the district and the foundation, because I think that I'm sure I missed whatever was provided because there was so much information, but I think this is just such an important piece, and the partnership and just the value that you provide and the collaboration, I think is amazing. And then just one last final thing is, having been a liaison to the health department this year, I would, you know, be excited in a future conversation offline to learn more about how the health department and the mental health board and the conservation district and foundation can all partner, because you're talking about mental health, physical health, and the beautiful outdoors. So thank you for the work that you do.
And I give
Thank you,
all
Chair.
of you a political line to share with your constituents. The foundation helps us keep our taxes low, right? We're still providing great opportunities and amenities and things for the district without going back to the taxpayer and asking them to fund it. So I think that that's one of the best things the foundation does provide McHenry County. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to new business. Do any members have agenda items they'd like to remove for discussion? Ms. Wagner,
16.b.2.4, please.
824? What was the number?
16B24.
B24. Anyone else? Oh, Mr. Wilbeck.
16B211 and 16B212.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Appointments, 14A.
Any others? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Smith, 14A.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to note that in the third Community Development and Housing Grant Commission, I believe it's Robert Grammer's name that was omitted. So he would be the third appointment for that commission. So that's just a typographical that we need to get his name inserted in there. And I'd also like to say that I've been on this commission for several years, and these appointments for this particular commission are all valuable members. They've worked with me for several years, and now Lori Parrish as chairman. I just would like to publicly thank them, Richard Adamson, Sue Drafthorn, and once again, Robert Grammer are all great commissioners, and I see no reason that they shouldn't be reappointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Scott, did you take note of that? We need to add that? Thank you. Okay, Ms. Wagner, 16B24.
Thank you. I just want to thank Mr. Terrio for adding the names. Is he here today? Oh, you're here. Thank you for adding the names of the election judges. I know there seemed to be some confusion at the Finance Department or Finance Committee meeting because they weren't on the resolution. I just had a suggestion is, because this is a public document, would it be possible to take the address and the phone numbers off this list and just put the names and the precincts?
Yes, the document that gets displayed publicly does not have their addresses on it.
Well, this one I pulled up from the website and it was on there, so I would just change it if possible.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Mr. Wilbeck, 16B 211 and 12.
Yeah, these comments will apply to both. We spoke briefly, I spoke briefly in finance on this. And the major issue is purchase versus lease. I've been studying this matter lately, and it seems like a lot of communities, a lot of villages, cities, etc., are leasing these days instead of purchasing. And I'm a big one for thinking outside the box, and I have not seen a good objective analysis comparing lease versus purchase. And with these two resolutions, we're talking about $400,000. As we all know, there's a lot of budgetary constraints, a lot of pressures on the budget. Here we have $400,000 that we can conserve. And I've heard things like, you know, the prices of used cars will continue to go up and escalate and things like that. Well, this county board's not in the futures business of used cars. And I doubt quite seriously in the future that we'll see this continued price growth. So I'm going to be voting against these two because I'd like to see a lease option and an objective cost comparison of both. And that's my only comment. Thank you.
Mr. Wilbeck. Mr. Vijay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pertaining to 16B 211 for the coroner's office, I noticed that the price of the item is approximately $38,000, correct? And let's go with that assumption. Okay. Now, we set aside $500,000 for an annual budget for vehicles. We increased that budget to $700,000, and my understanding is there is left of $36,000. So we're going to be over budget on this. When we talk about the coroner's vehicle, and I understand the coroner had purchased vehicles last time in April of 2021, had come for the resolution. Is this vehicle, first off, going to be applied for this year's budget, or is it going to be applied to next year's budget?
Next year's budget?
Is it this year or next year? It was not clear for me on the resolution.
I'm sorry, I was pulling up the information.
That's all right, take your time.
What was the first part of the question?
Well, the first part of the question is we have $700,000 that we set aside for vehicles. I asked to find out where the resolution was for the extra $200,000. That never appeared in the last year. So I assumed we did it at the budget. I've looked at the resolutions. I can't find it.
We'll get you that documentation. I recall.
Okay, so now we're at $700,000. We have $36,000 left because we bought pursuit vehicles in February of this year. We bought also for vehicles for planning and development, one for facilities, so we bought that too. So I was told we had $36,000. Now we're spending over that amount of money. My first question is that purchase of the coroner's vehicle for next year's budget, or is it this year's?
Remember, Vijay, this is from the coroner special fund?
Special fund.
Right. The coroner has a special fund that comes from coroner's fees, and I see that this is identified as coming from the coroner's special fund.
Okay, so then we still have $36,000. So this doesn't apply for our vehicle set-aside fund. Okay, all right. Now, I understand that the need for the vehicles for the coroner's report, because we're trying to play catch-up the use. So all right. So that answered that question. Then, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go to 16B212, the authorization for vehicles. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. On page 235 of our packet, it lists at the top of the resolution, that we're going to request a 1 Dodge Durango and a 10 Dodge Charger Pursuit vehicles. And I understand the constant use of vehicles, then that would be the case. But then when I look on page 235, it says a Ram 1500. Is that a typo? Is that not to be included, or was that to be included in the title of the resolution? And I ask whichever individual wrote the resolution.
It was part of the bid, so it's listed as part of the bid. It's not being purchased at this time. We bid for the Chargers, the Durangos, and the trucks, the Ram 1500s pursuit vehicles, but that's a standard vehicle, so it's just the results of the bid. It's not being purchased as part of this.
So then the award statement on page 235, that's for next year's budget.
Not for next year's budget. It was a bid that was done this year, and the bid included Chargers, Durangos, and Ram 1500s. Those are the results of that bid for this year, and I'm sorry, for next year, but the bid goes for 1 year. So the fact that we bid for that truck does not mean that anyone's going to buy one. It was just the results of the bid, and that's why it's presented.
Okay. So given that being the case, then, is the request for the 10 Dodge Chargers, the Ram, and the Durango, that's going to be in next year's budget?
Yes.
And so we're writing a resolution for this time. So what happens then is that we're looking at $386,510 will be already assigned to the Sheriff's Department for next year. And given that being the case, that leaves us with $115,000 left for all the other vehicles. And I'm wondering why we would not be looking at this as a budget request rather than it's going to be now we're setting aside, because we already bought this year 10 vehicles for the Sheriff's Department, and we've already bought that. We're not talking about the replaced total vehicle that was totaled, and the tort fund paid for that. So are we now getting into the point where we're starting to say, let's set money aside now, and we haven't even done the budget yet? And if that's the case, my question is, why aren't other departments doing the same thing in the future? I mean, we're already making commitments, and I'm trying to figure out, because the history of buying equipment for the Sheriff's Department, and rightfully so, in 19 we bought 10 Charger Pursuits. In 12, 15, 20 we bought 7, plus 3 Rams, plus 1 Durango. We bought again this year, and I understand every year we have to replace vehicles. I'm supportive of replacing it, but I'm getting into a concern that now we're saying, well, let's start reserving stuff now when we don't even know what the budget will actually be for 2022, 2023. So all these vehicles are going to be bought potentially next year?
They will be bought next year. And I'll let Sandy follow up, but in the background discussion on page 234, we're noting that given where we're at with the supply chain and backlog of vehicles, we've been informed. We've been informed that if we're going to get vehicles next year, we got to get the order in by the end of September.
Okay.
That's this month, and it is uncomfortable to be making these kinds of commitments, but it's also acknowledging, I think, that we know we're going to need new squad cars.
And rightfully so. I think the Sheriff's Department should have the most up-to-date vehicles to protect the citizens of a county. No problem whatsoever with that. I'm just trying to figure out, if we do this, are we going to then ask for an additional amount of money for other departments' vehicles? Because we went from 500 to 700. Now we're spending, next year's 500, we're spending almost, I don't know, 70%, 75%. Given that being the case, I think Board Member Wilbeck introduces an interesting question pertaining to leasing.
And I'm sorry Kevin's not here, and Kevin will be here on Tuesday evening. We can continue this discussion. But the incremental growth from 500 to 700, that 200,000 was to attempt to kind of replicate some of what Member Wilbeck has talked about. You know, the buying and flipping vehicles because we buy them so much below the market, and we're trying that with a handful of vehicles, notably some pickups that we're using in planning and development. So that was where that additional 200,000 came, and we did have a discussion with the board about that.
Right. Excuse me, I'll let you finish. I apologize.
We continue to budget 500,000 for next year. That's the plan, and if we are making some commitments for that 500,000 with these dollars.
I can drill down a little bit more. The 500,000, to your question about the 115 left over, that's Sheriff Department. That's for upfitting lights, et cetera, that they need to put on the car in addition to buying the vehicle. There is a separate, but in the same non-departmental fund for everyone else that is in the amount of $200,000. Not to muddy the water with what Pete's talking about, that $200,000. There's a $500,000 line item in the budget for the sheriff's vehicles. There is a $200,000 line item in the budget for everyone else's vehicles. And then there's a separate, yet still another fund for all of DOT's vehicles.
So, just so that the public understands, it's $700,000 that we set aside for vehicles, total. I don't care how you say
Not
there's a special fund here and
Department
there,
of
it's $700,000 out of the budget.
Not including Department of Transportation, 700,000 is correct.
I understand the Department of Transportation, okay. So, given that being the case, I'm just concerned that we're now doing that. And I understand Mr. Austin has pointed out the supply chain issues. I agree with you. But that applies to all the different departments. We have supply chain issues. If that being the case, we would make requests now to make purchases for next year for air conditioning or for any number of factors. I mean, we're all with that.
If there was something as critical as squad cars and the manufacturer told us you have to order by the end of September, I think we would have the same discussion on another commodity.
If I can jump in real quick. So the car manufacturers are not very excited about producing pursuit vehicles for government. They want to manufacture vehicles to sell to the public. That's where they're making their money. So we were told that there's a very small window, and there's only a certain amount of vehicles that they're going to manufacture for government, law enforcement specific entities. And that window is going to close at the end of the month. It's going to open, I forget the date, not next Monday, the Monday following that. So and we just got to get them a purchase order. They're going to leave it open for 7 days. If the number of vehicles come in from law enforcement agencies in high enough numbers, they're going to close it down once they get to their max. So our fleet manager is going to be sitting with Sunnyside to place that order first thing on that Monday morning to make sure that we're going to get our vehicles. Once it's closed down, we're not going to be able to get any more pursuit vehicles. The other departments do not require law enforcement pursuit vehicles. So there'll still be a supply and demand issue, but we will be able to purchase those vehicles for the other departments. It's not at the same level of emergency.
One more thing, Mr. Chairman. I do want to thank, because I have reached out to Mr. Austin and Sandra and the staff, Adam included, to provide me with other kinds of questions that I had, and so I'm not bringing those up now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Mr. Vijay. Ms. Wegner.
Thank you. I just want to bring up something that I spoke about at Finance Committee, that it kind of follows what Mr. Wilbeck said about thinking outside the box. We seem to put a lot of cash outlay in vehicles, snow plows, And I think it would be a good idea for us to look at financing, especially the snow plows. I'm not sure if we can do that with pursuit vehicles, but other vehicles too, because first of all, you're paying, right, you have a big, large cash outlay right at the beginning. And instead, we could be paying during the life of the vehicle or snowplow. It gives us the cash to use during the consecutive years and during the initial cash outlay year. And the other option too is, I know this isn't about this discussion, but possibly issuing some bonds too to help some of the cash outlay with this. Because if you look at the data, municipalities who do issue bonds normally have a lower tax levy. And it's just something that I'd like you guys to think about, because that might help alleviate some of the pressure that we have on the budget. So I know it's not specifically with this, but it's all kind of tied together with financing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Ms. Meshes?
Thank you. I have two questions, maybe they're related. What percent of our pursuit vehicles are we replacing? Or like how many pursuit vehicles do we have? Because I realize we have like 10 squads out per shift, but that's like, does that mean we have 30 pursuit vehicles then, or no?
So that's a great question, and Mr. Vijek also had asked about pursuit vehicles. So almost all the vehicles we purchase are pursuit, and we typically retire them after 5 years into another division, like civil process servers, detectives, in other areas, other departments as well. So right now we have 89 active pursuit vehicles, and those are ones that are on the road in a pursuit capacity.
Okay. So then on that, so we're about 1/9 that we're getting rid of, we're replacing right now. Do we 1/9 for every 5 years? But I guess that's lower then. This is lower than normal?
So ideally, if we were, and we've looked at leasing, so
Yeah.
several years ago, we sat down with Enterprise. At that time, they didn't offer pursuit vehicles. But we liked the concept, and we said, can we replicate this concept? And we looked at it. If we ideally were going to do that, we would have to replace 26 vehicles a year. And that would be on a 4-year or 100,000-mile replacement process. So we're under what we would love to be at, but the board has, over the years since I've been here, worked with us, and we were at 300,000 for a long time, and that was for the whole fleet outside of DOT. So that was sheriff's office and other departments. And we went to the board and said, we can replace these on a faster schedule, get more money coming back to us after we sell them, just like in a leasing program, but we need more money. And the board was very generous in increasing that amount so we could do it. But yeah, so we look to between, 1 year was only 7 vehicles based on budget, but around 10 to 12 vehicles a year. Ideally, it'd be 26.
Okay, you actually answered both questions I had. With my one question, you hit them both, so thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none. Pete, you got a report for us?
I do. It's kind of unusual, giving you a 16-page written report, and of course I appreciate everyone's contributions there, but I do have a few other things I wanted to note. As Chairman Bueller alluded, Kevin and I will do a little bit more of a budget update Tuesday evening. When we had the 2 big presentations today, and Kevin has a family event out of state, so we thought it best we'll do that Tuesday evening. But we're just going to kind of set up our discussion that we're going to have with the full committee of the whole on the 29th. But we will have a little bit of budget discussion on Tuesday evening. When I wanted to note that Diana Hartman has asked that we include her quarterly report in the county board agenda. So Kathy's going to add that. So it'll add online, but we'll have that for you to look at over the weekend. The regional office is to provide a quarterly report to the county board, and I appreciate Diana's stepping up and trying to meet that. She grabbed me in the parking lot this morning and said, hey, is it in there? Is it in there? And I checked. It's not yet, but we'll get it in there. Wanted also you to know that Scott and Alicia and I have met, I think, with 8 county board candidates. kind of just making the effort to reach out to those candidates that are running this fall who aren't on the county board. If you're on the county board, you're welcome to meet with us also. But we're just trying to introduce a very apolitical, discussion about, the role of a county board member, how they interact with other offices and agencies and county administration. Try and give them about an hour and kind of walk through some key parts of the website and talk about what they're interested in. But we've been enjoying having those meetings, so hopefully we'll have a few more of them. The Advanced McHenry County program, which has been a real pride of everybody and a real success. We've had a discussion with Finance Committee last week, and we're going to take a little pause. We've got millions of dollars worth of requests in, but we want to just focus ourselves on ourselves right now and get our own budget done in the coming weeks and make some of those difficult allocation decisions. So we're going to probably pause till about December, and we have communicated that to all of our applicants, and I think everybody's understanding that we've got to drill down and focus on our own budget first. So we're working on that. As I shared with the Administrative Services Committee, I think a couple weeks ago, on Saturday morning, I'm going to be on a panel discussion at the Illinois Municipal League, talking about what we're doing to pursue the federal dollars to help install fiber in our western half and northern part of the county. So I'm looking forward to that discussion. I'm going to be on the panel with DCEO's Matt Schmidt, who's running the Connect Illinois program. So we're trying to stay tight with them and make sure we're getting the best information we can on the availability of those federal fiber dollars. The sheriff's office, I was over there a couple days ago and I saw all these bags of body cameras spread out all over the training room, and I just wanted you to know that it's coming. The training is underway. Those officers are getting some intense training right now on how to operate those cameras, and they're going to be out on the street soon. So pleased to share that. Cheryl and I met with 4 employee forums this week, just kind of held one in this room, one at DOT, one at Valley High, one in the courthouse, trying to touch employees and kind of talk about the responses we received from the employee survey that HR did earlier this summer. Those are good meetings. On your desk this morning, we placed the public notice for the Randall Road Quick Take. That will be preceding the next Transportation Committee meeting. It'll be in this room, or I guess it'll be in the conference rooms behind us. So that'll be the morning of the 28th. And finally, the Sheriff's Open House is this weekend. So if you got some free time Saturday, is it 10 o'clock? 10 to 2. Come and touch a dog. All right, that's all I got. Thanks.
Okay, we do have need for executive session today, so I'll entertain a motion to enter executive session in accordance with 5 ILCS 120/2C11 and 12 pertaining to pending litigation. Mr. Thorson, seconded by Mr. Nowak. Any discussion? Kathy, could we have a roll call vote, please? Yes, we will. Waiting for the roll call vote.
We haven't approved the motion to go into executive session yet. We will vote.
Michelle Bebe. Yes. Carlos Acosta. Rachel Althoff. Dave Ames. Yes. John Collins. Yes. Stephen Colby. Yes. Joseph Gottemauer. Yes. Tanya Gindred. Tom Young. James Kearns. Yes. Teresa Meschels. Yes. Lori Parrish. Yes. Robert Nowak. Yes. Carolyn Schofield. Jeffrey Schwartz.